Hello there. Today we're going to learn how to turn a notebook into a REST microservice. For that we are going to use the Jupyter Kernel Gateway, and you'll find the documentation about the Jupyter Kernel Gateway at github.com/Jupyter/Kernel Gateway. And the Jupyter Kernel Gateway is a web server that provides headless access to Jupyter kernels. So we're going to install the Jupyter Kernel Gateway using pip. Next, we will start configuring the kernel gateway. So we need to change one configuration in the configuration file to allow access from different IPs. So first we will use this Jupyter Kernel Gateway generate config. So we have the default configuration in this file here. Now we will have to change the IP range configuration so we can access this kernel gateway from different IPs. Now what we are going to do is we are going to write a notebook programmatically. So we were going to import the NB format, and we will create a notebook with two cells. So in the first cell we will just import JSON. On the second cell, this is where we are going to write our REST microservice. So the thing is that Jupyter kernel uses these comments, like we see here. For example, we have this get method /convert. So this way, the Jupyter kernel will read this notebook and will understand it as a REST microservice. So we will pass this /convert, and then we will have this Celsius, and we can pass degree Celsius temperature, for example 30 degrees Celsius, and then it will convert to Fahrenheit, and it will print converted to Fahrenheit following this equation here. So we define these two cells. Now we are writing into the notebook. So there's a new code cell, cell 1 and cell 2. Then we are writing the notebook metadata. And finally, we are writing this, let's call it REST API Celsius to Fahrenheit IPython notebook. And here we will see that when we run the cell, it will create this REST API Celsius to Fahrenheit notebook here. So we install the Jupyter Kernel Gateway. We generate this configuration file, default configuration file, and we included this kernel gateway app IP to a star, so it will accept requests from different IPs. Then we are creating a notebook programmatically, and we are saving with this name here. In one cell we have just importing JSON. On the other cell is where the microservice is, especially because of this get convert. And here at the Jupyter Kernel Gateway documentation, we have an explanation to turn a notebook cell into an HTTP handler. We have this prefix with this line comment. So here we have the get HTTP get request for a certain path. In this case is hello world. In our case is convert. And here you'll see how you can set up everything. Here is the post. We're setting some response status and headers. And here you find the documentation. So we are using this notebook HTTP mode. You'll find more information about the Jupyter Kernel Gateway and everything what you can do with it in this documentation. And in our case here, we're just using this get request here. And now what we are going to do is to run this Jupyter Kernel Gateway. We are using this notebook HTTP method, we are setting the IP, we are setting here the port. Here we pass the name of our notebook. Here I'm just using this to show how we can get information. When we execute this, it will print these lines, and this, for example, if you don't define a port and you want to find out the port, for example, we just get in the port from when we run this, the output, the std out, and we are reading the lines. So let's run and see what happens. So the kernel started, it's registering this get method for convert, and the Jupyter kernel gateway is at localhost port 9127. And if we see here, print port is 9127. We define it here, but also we got from this information here on the std out. So now we have our kernel gateway running, and we will do the same thing with we've been doing before with ngrok to tunnel localhost into a public URL, and then we will access using ngrok. So I will install ngrok. Here we are configuring ngrok, and you should put your ngrok authorization token. Now I can connect to the port 9127, and we have this URL now. If we click on this URL, so we're not passing any messages here, so it says there is not found. But now if we use convert, and then we pass the Celsius, let's see, 30 degrees Celsius, so we get converted to Fahrenheit, 86 Fahrenheit. So this is a very interesting way how you can implement a RESTful microservices. So you just used a notebook, we configured the Jupyter kernel gateway, we use this notebook HTTP mode, so we have this single line comments in the cells, and it will, for example, receive HTTP GET request. We can have other methods and set HTTP response status, headers. Here we also seen how to create a notebook programmatically. We define the cells, we add the cells to a notebook, we add the metadata, we write to a file. Here we run this command using subprocess. There are other ways also how you can run these commands. We tunnel using ngrok, and we have now microservice running. So let's now go to 15 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit, and it's 59 Fahrenheit. So let's try to see if it's correct. So 15 Celsius to Fahrenheit, and it's 59 Fahrenheit, just like our microservice tells us. So one thing that you have in mind is as long as this Google Colab environment is running, our microservice is available. As we know, Google Colab has limitations. If the notebook is idle for a long time, it will disconnect. If you use it for more than 12 hours, it will also disconnect. So you have these limitations, but you also have this interesting tool. You can explore microservices and use notebooks also as a REST microservice.